You chose the word magical for this episode. I always have guests pick a word because I find it very interesting, the different words that people decide. So, what was it about magical that drew you to that word?
Well, it was a once in a lifetime experience that won't be replicated ever again. What we did at Much Music, what they were doing at Much Music before I was even there, as a viewer tuning into Much Music, it was magic. It was special, and and we'll never see something like that again. Unfortunately, it's a different time. There's different ways of doing it, but the way they did it, and the way then soon after I did it, and then when I left, the others that were doing it after me, it was just a special way, a magical way of getting the music to the music fan. Hey Johnny, how are you?
Good, Rick. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thanks, my man. Let me get on to camera here. There it is. There.
Hey, that
Over there.
works.
There you are. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. I got a little worried every time I see someone's iPhone. I think it's going to be like the vertical thing, but you got a nice
Oh,
video set up there.
I switch it over to horizontal. So
Yeah, see, you're a smart
yeah,
man. You've been in, I
I,
can tell right away that you've been in the entertainment industry.
I've done a few of these before. I've done a few.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not as many as you, perhaps, because you have your own show. But yeah, I've done a few.
Yeah, I'm getting up there now. I think this
Good
is
for you.
episode like 112 or yeah, 112.
That's awesome, man. Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to like come on the show in the first place. I know you did a podcast with my friend Oliver George.
Oh yeah,
Uh
yeah, Oliver. Yeah,
yeah,
Oliver's.
yeah.
Oh,
He's
you
also an
just reminded
Ottawa
me.
local comedian.
Yeah, are you Ottawa as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Ottawa. Okay, cool, man. Great, great, great,
Yeah.
great. I like your background there.
Thanks. This is what I'm trying to actually build
There.
behind me, but for now I just use like a screen. I wonder
Green,
if I,
screen. Yeah, yeah. But it looks
yeah,
good though.
yeah. It's a
So
little
yeah.
green screen that I did up in Photoshop.
No, I love it, man. I love it.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna start by saying, I have a family that's sick today, and
Oh
I've
no.
been they're sort of resting right now,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know how long you need, but is like half hour good enough time?
Yeah, yeah, that's good enough. Well, whatever
Sure.
works for you. Yeah.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
usually
And
go
then it's
like
like
45 minutes to an
40.
hour, but it's totally fine if you have to get
Well,
out of here.
we could probably push it to 35.
Yeah, yeah, just let me
Be
know.
in there, and then I'll go make them some soup and some lunch, and
Ah,
yeah, they're all in bed or on the couch right now. They came down with a bug, so
it's that type of
it's all good.
season
So,
now.
but we have it is the season now. Yeah, everyone's
Yeah,
got,
yeah.
but we have time, so let's start rolling if you want, if you're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Let's
Yeah,
go. I usually just cut into these things wherever, so it just feels
yeah,
like people are listening in on like a phone call that we're doing.
yeah. It's all good, man.
And a
Get
lot of
it?
times like this, it's like me meeting someone for the first time as well. So it's an interesting conversation to capture because I'm learning about you and you're learning about me at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But for people that don't know about you, why don't you give first a little bit of backstory on yourself? Like, I know you're born in
Yeah.
Hamilton, but like, how did you get to the point where you're at now?
Yeah, I born and raised in Hamilton, went to university in St. Catharines for physical education, and I was going to be a teacher. All my older siblings are teachers or in the school system, the education system, but I entered a contest at Much Music. Much Music was a place that I watched religiously as a kid, as a young Canadian, as a teenager. I loved music. I lived music back in the day. Not as much anymore. uh, don't have my thumb on the pulse like I did back in the day. But they would have this contest. It was called the Temp Contest to work at Much Music for the summer. And I entered the contest and won the contest in 1994. It'll be, gosh, 30 years next summer that I entered Much Music.
Wow.
And I just had the dream of, once I got my foot in the door, I dreamt about being on air as a VJ. I was one step closer to that dream getting into the environment at 299 Queen Street West. So I just stuck with it. I made up, made my demo tapes, did anything that they asked me to do. And it took a year and a half after winning that contest to go on air, but I wasn't going to give up. I persevered, and lo and behold, they hired me on as a Much Music VJ
Wow.
back in 96, early 96.
What was that preparation like for your first day? Knowing you've won
Oh
and
man.
that's kind of settled in, right? Like the
Yeah.
hard part, it feels like the hard part is done, right? I beat the
Yeah.
competition. I got through. Wow, I got
Yeah.
selected. well, how do you mentally prepare for that very first day of this kind of, dream situation?
It's so true. You still want to be making sure that you're all in and you know your stuff and you're prepared and you're ready to go. It was music, right? And I knew my music back in the day. And I was given an hour audition on air live on Much Music one of the weekends leading up to this. So I had a little bit of experience, but I was still very green, still very new, still very uncomfortable, lacking confidence. But I just prepared all I could in terms of researching the music videos that I was introducing that day.
Hmm.
Luckily, there was no live band coming in for an interview, so that was good. Little pressure was off in that respect, but I knew all the videos that I was introducing. I introduced the Tragically Hit video as my first one on live much as a VJ,
Could
and
be
that's
more
it.
Canadian.
It could be more Canadian, yeah.
Such a Canadian experience. Like I'm like, we need this now. Like I'm happy Canadian podcasts are popping up, but I'm
Yeah,
like, man,
yeah.
we need like Much Music was so important to me as a teen. Like it
Oh,
informed
cool.
me on what was happening like culturally with music.
Yeah,
It kept you being able to have conversations with your friends. Did you see such and such? Did you see this?
yeah.
And now without that, it's like, what are they being exposed to,
You're right. Like back in the day when I was a teenager or a young Canadian, it was my local radio station or a radio station that I could pick up, which was The
Mhm.
Edge, Toronto 102.1 is what I listened to, or Much Music. And you're right, The Edge wasn't playing all genres. Much Music was playing all genres. So
Yeah.
it was the one-stop shop for everything music, all types of genres too. And you're right, if you wanted to learn or if you wanted to be educated on what was going on in music, you tuned into Erica or Steve or
Hmm.
Master T or Michael Williams, and they gave you the goods. They really did. And I think we have a similar story, you and I. Much Music was the only show in town if you wanted your music education, and that's where you and I both went. It
Or
sounds
you
like,
had to
and
go,
most other young Canadians back in the day.
yeah, or you had to hit up an HMV and just try to listen to see what
Yeah,
everyone else was picking up. Now it's an algorithm that just tells you what you
look
like, and you're
over.
like, oh,
That's right. Yeah. Everyone's
yeah,
listening to this. You should be listening to this. Okay, I'll
yeah.
try it. Oh, I like it.
All
Okay,
right,
let's
I
do
guess Taylor Swift again. No.
it.
But you chose the word magical for this episode. I always have guests pick a word because I find it very interesting, the different words that people decide. So, what was it about magical that drew you to that word?
Well, it was a once in a lifetime experience that won't be replicated ever again. What we did at Much Music, what they were doing at Much Music before I was even there, as a viewer tuning into Much Music, it was magic. It was special, and and we'll never see something like that again. Unfortunately, it's a different time. There's different ways of doing it, but the way they did it, and the way then soon after I did it, and then when I left, the others that were doing it after me, it was just a special way, a magical way of getting the music to the music fan.
Mm.
We had these windows that we'd open up, and people would come in
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
participate with us,
I
not
would
just
I
be
would
there.
change my when I moved to Toronto, I would
Yeah,
change my route to where I was
yeah,
going so that I could walk by the windows just to see if anything was
that's
happening.
amazing.
Like
That's
I would
amazing.
literally, it would bring me downtown because I was like, who knows? Like,
And,
one time I was walking home from work and like the MMVAs were just on and I just stumbled into a Down with Webster concert.
yeah,
I was like, oh, this is amazing. Well, where
yeah,
does this
that's so
happen
cool.
anywhere else? Like
Yeah, you're so right. Oh, I was going to ask you, so what did you stumble upon? But to stumble upon the MMVA is probably the biggest ticket in town for that whole year. That's
crazy.
a pretty big show to stumble onto.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Because you just see like all this commotion, and like, I didn't
Yeah,
even know it was happening, and I just
yeah.
like, oh, and then you end up just, oh, I'm at a concert now. I remember I
Yeah.
went down there and Coldplay did a free
Oh,
concert in the parking lot. Like it was literally magical. Like you
that
can't
is so
describe.
magical. And we had so many amazing bands come and performing that in that parking lot, from David Bowie to the Smashing Pumpkins to Lenny Kravitz and Britney Spears to Bare Naked Ladies and Our Lady Peace. Like they
Yeah.
were all out there. And then we had performers out on John Street like Kanye West and NSYNC and a list of others. They would come out to Queen Street. We'd obviously shut all the streets down when these things were going on, but it was just electric. Right in that core of Toronto, right in that downtown area at
Mhm.
299 Queen and John. It was And if you lived around, even if you didn't live around that area, you knew something was going on, so you'd make sure you made your way down there if you
Yeah.
wanted to be part of it. And that's why there were so many people there, like every day it felt like. But it was
Yeah.
cool because we loved bringing the people in, the viewers of Much Music, the fans of the bands, the fans of music. They made it.
Who was like a guest that you had to interview? It could be ET Canada, could be, Much Music as well. But like, who was a guest you had to interview where you were like genuinely nervous, like a big fan of?
Well, I think the first time that we started bringing actors into the Much Music environment, because we were bringing bands in nonstop, but then the movie companies aligned with our marketing department and our sales department and said, let's get the big name A-list stars in. Like we had like people like Tom Cruise and Ben Affleck and Harrison Ford, and then I got to interview John Travolta when John Travolta came in for the first time, and I was a big Welcome Back, Kotter fan way before your time. Vinny Barbarino was one of my favorite characters growing up as a kid. This kid from New York City, this Italian kid. He's a punk. He's a character. He's sort of larger than life in a way, and I was just attracted to his character of Vinny Barbarino. So when he came in, when John Travolta came in, I was super nervous, and I think you could tell during the whole hour of that live at Much. But first and foremost, I'm a fan of music. I'm a fan of film, and I think that's why I was cut out for that gig in the perfect way, because I knew everything about these people, whether they were the actors or the bands or the artists coming in. I just didn't obsess over them, but I like did my research that I knew everything about them.
Mm-hmm.
It made for, well, that's how you want to prepare for an interview. You want to know as much about your subject as possible, because if things come up, you know exactly what they're talking about, and you can go down that road with them to have that
Yeah.
conversation. So,
That
but
is
I
why
think,
it's special to interview a fan. Like when you're a fan of someone,
yeah,
like the interview is going to be so much better because of
yeah.
that, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
If you can keep it together as a fan and don't let it show and
yeah,
still be professional on that level, obviously Much Music was nationwide. It was live.
sure.
You got to keep the fan inside, deep down inside as much as you can. And then bring out that professional interviewer side, and
Hmm.
it worked. It worked. I knew I was nervous deep down inside, and a few of my friends saw it too, but I think
You're
hopefully
like,
I
I
fooled
pulled
them.
it off. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
hope.
That's great. I know, like I mentioned ET Canada before. What was that transition like for you to go from this like music heavy environment? You're getting a little bit of actors, like you said,
Yeah.
transitioning into mostly like entertainment broader is
Yeah.
kind of what you're covering, right? Like
It,
how did you
it
prepare for
was,
that?
I'll tell you, Johnny, it was two different worlds for sure, because music and live, and me dressing like a punk kid most of
Yeah.
the time, from that to entertainment and taped, and me wearing suits with ties and Italian leather shoes, and now I'm no longer wearing hats. I'm styling my hair.
Yeah.
So it's two totally different worlds. ET Canada was a pre-taped show that aired 22 minutes every night, but we shot in a studio as of 10 in the morning, and we
Oh
shot
wow.
it all day long. So it was polished, it was perfect, it was packaged, no mistakes. Much Music was the total opposite. We were live. If we made mistakes, you saw them, and
Hmm.
you saw a lot of them that I made, and it was out there. But it was more of an adrenaline rush for me doing Much
Yeah.
Music because of the aspect, and I preferred the live. We called it the environment when we were in the studio at Much Music, and we were in an actual studio north of Toronto doing ET Canada. So we didn't have people walking by Queen Street or John Street to look into
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what was going on. So two totally different gigs.
Yeah.
I loved both of them. I loved each of them insanely, like in a huge way. But there were differences. There were
Yeah.
differences.
Live was great, but like you also love the Italian leather shoes. You're like,
Not
you know
at
what?
first. Not
I
at
could do
first, but I
both.
grew to love my
Okay.
leather shoes.
The fact though that you said that you like the live environment, because I know you also did Big Vinny Styles, You Should Do
Oh
Comedy, his podcast too.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes.
had him on recently as well. And
Yes,
I always loved Vince since he did like AM 640, like the show with Sandra Carusi,
that's right. They did
and
live stuff.
that
Yeah.
to me as a comedian, because I've been doing stand-up comedy for the last like 13 years.
Oh,
So
have you? Okay. Gotcha.
ever since I was 19, I was like, this is what I'm
Okay.
gonna do. So I've just been doing
Oh,
comedy ever since then.
amazing.
Um, but like I get that from you, like you could just as easily be doing stand-up too. The fact that you feel
Oh,
like you can thrive in a live environment like that, it would be
well,
such an easy thing, I think, for you to do. All
I
you would have to do is write jokes, and you already have the hardest part is like the being able to perform under pressure.
delivery persona, the
Yeah,
charisma, I
you
guess.
have like a 2 decades of like being able
Well,
to perform live, like
well, you have, as a comedian, you need good material. My material was always great because it was the artists,
yeah,
not me. It was the
sure,
artists
sure.
that I was
But now it
trying
can
to come.
transition to stories with those artists. Like thinking about like the your most embarrassing moment on the show. Like what happened with that? How did you recover from that? Like those are
Well,
things that you share that
yeah,
people will go, "Oh, I didn't know that."
right.
And you made
Those
it
stories,
funny,
yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah.
right, yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be comedy, but I bet you would do really well at like just, hey, Rick Campanelli is just going to tour Canada and do like live storytelling show. And it
Oh,
doesn't
I
have
would
to
love
be,
that.
there's not a
I'd love
pressure
that.
of it being funny.
Yeah.
They're just telling stories. And there's going
Because
to
I
be
think Ed the
people there
Sock
that
and
want to
I,
hear it.
Ed the Sock and I were working on that one day, working on this project. It never came to be, but it would have been nice to go across the nation, telling stories, showing clips of interviews, and
Yeah.
and basically we just wrapped the Much Music Experience tour with the doc, Sean Menard's doc, 299 Queen Street West, which actually was like that because we were up on stage
Uh,
after the screening, telling stories.
yeah. How did
The
that
good old.
go?
It was great. It was great. It just came to an end on, well, last Friday in Toronto. We ended where we started in Toronto, but we took the show, the screening, his doc, to what, 14 different cities across Canada, which
Amazing.
was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We got to meet
So
a lot
you
of
already
people.
know the market.
I know the market. So maybe one day when
Dude,
people
it'd be
forget about us again,
crazy. Yeah,
in the
yeah,
next
yeah.
couple,
5-year reunion
yeah,
of
yeah,
the 1990 of the
maybe,
documentary. Like,
yeah, maybe. There's
yeah, I
already
could
some
see it.
talk,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I
but
just
I
love
do like it.
encouraging people to do comedy.
Yeah, I do love the energy though of being in a live room. And if
Mhm.
if you win over a crowd, you've got them in the palm of your hand.
It's
It's
no
a
greater
special
feeling.
feeling. It's a special feeling.
Yeah, especially in comedy. Like I've learned to when I started, I used to try to get out all the words that I wanted to say because you only have
Right,
6 minutes or whatever. And I
right.
wasn't leaving any room for people to react to what I
React.
was saying. So now I've taken more of an approach of just like saying something and then
Yeah,
letting the silence kind of sit there to
yeah,
determine whether
yeah.
or not it was funny. It's
And
such
the
a
interaction is significant too with a live crowd
mhm.
because they're part of the show too. And if you let the joke go, let it breathe, something happens, like someone says something, well, then you go off that tangent and you go down what they
Yeah.
said. And the interaction is always so much better than going from A to B to C, I think, anyway.
Yeah. And good crowd work too is like going back to the word of the episode, magical. Like
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
to pull information from the left and then pull information from the
Yes.
right, and then 5 minutes later figure out a way
Uh,
to connect those two things, it
oh
just
my
blows
God.
your mind
That's
every
brilliant.
single time.
That's brilliant stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Who do you have any favorite like comedians that you're watching right now, or anybody that's like standing out to you?
Well, I really like Frank Spanone.
Frank
Frank,
Spadone's great.
Frank's a great guy. He's a fun guy. He's a paisan. So he's been making me laugh. Eric Johnson is a local comedian from the Hamilton area who I've just
Mm.
become friends with. He's a funny guy, and his delivery and his energy is like, it's like at another level with that guy. I'll always be good friends and a big fan of Russell Peters, who I worked with as an intern at 299 Queen Street West all those years ago. He was actually doing stand-up comedy for a few years when we met. And we met
Wow.
mid 90s when I first got introduced to Much Music. He was already there as an intern behind the scenes and already doing his stand-up. So to see how far he's come and how much he's succeeded, but he stuck with it. He stuck
Hmm.
with it down, those down years, and didn't give up because that was his passion. and he knew that's all he wanted to do. And now he's about to film another
Oh yeah, he
stand-up
just filmed
show
one in Abu
in
Dhabi.
Dhabi. Yeah, that's like
Something crazy like that.
so
He's
crazy.
he's like,
And
some people are lucky to have like a year of arena tours. He's like, I've been doing it for a decade. And I was
decade,
like, oh my God.
it's
I
so
love
good.
shit like that. Like early as a comedian, I would get jealous very easily of if somebody was quote unquote surpassing me or whatever. But
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, no, anyone doing good in comedy is good for all of us
It's
because it just
inspiring.
shows you what's
It opens,
possible.
yeah, it shows you what's possible. It opens the doors for more comics. It's inspiring as all hell too, isn't it? Like
Yeah. You're like,
that
look
person,
where it
well,
can
I want
take
to,
you.
I want to go perform at the O2 Arena or wherever
Yeah,
around the
yeah,
world.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so it makes you work harder at your passion, at your dreams, and if you do put in all that work, you're gonna get there someday. Anyone will with all that work and their
Yeah.
material good enough.
Yeah.
I
Now,
believe it.
there's a question that I always ask my guests towards the end of the podcast as well. Is if you could make a phone call to a 15-year-old version of yourself. So really think about who you were at 15 and give them a
Yes.
piece of advice based on what you know now. Also knowing it won't affect your current timeline, so you can't give them lottery
Yeah.
numbers.
I was quite shy as a kid. I was a very shy kid. I didn't open up as much. I kept everything in. I'm the youngest of a family of six, the youngest kid of four kids. So I was always the listener at the dinner table, wherever we were. I was always listening to my older siblings and my parents. Shy, quiet, didn't say much. And all that started happening, I guess, when I was introduced to much music. I started coming a bit more out of my shell just because I knew music and I could have a conversation. I could hold my own in that world. But I wish I was a little more outgoing and I was in a way, but I wish I was a little bit more outgoing and more vocal in high school and university. I was very social. I wanted to fit in with all cliques and all groups, but I just wish I was a little more of the way I am today. Like
Mhm.
not afraid to meet people, want to have conversation with people. I'll sit around and chat with someone I just met for a long time if they're interested in my story. But maybe I wish I was a bit more like that when I was 15 or a teenager.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I love the purpose of that question too, is in case anyone young is listening to this,
Yeah.
every episode they can get advice based on,
No, I love
someone
it
with
too.
years of
I, I,
experience.
I love that question, and yeah, I hope it's hard to push someone who's quiet or shy.
Mhm.
You know, you just know that it's not going to be that way for a long time, or maybe it is if that's the way you prefer to be. But I found that I needed to be more in the forefront of a conversation as time
Mhm.
went by, and mute with music that helped me a great deal.
Yeah. I think it's important too to like put a pin in the fact that it was like music for you that helped come out of your shell, kind of
Yeah,
proving that like if you can just latch on to something that
so
will
true.
be the thing that brings you out of your shell. Like for me, it
So,
was watching like stand-up comedy. I also love pro wrestling as a kid.
yeah,
I
yeah, I
was
did
like
too. I did too, man.
right roped into that because it's
Yeah,
such storytelling, right? It's like
so,
the storytelling that's been around for like longer than movies, I think.
so
They've
true, man. Pro
like,
wrestling, I was big into that in the 80s. Oh my gosh.
who's your person?
I knew them all back then. I even got to interview some of them that I was
Oh
watching back.
wow.
I interviewed Hulk Hogan a couple times throughout my career on Much and then at ET. And then in the 80s, he's like this Hulkamania was like global. It was everywhere.
Yeah,
So to
yeah.
do a presence like Hulk Hogan, and he played the guitar, he brought his guitar into Much Music that one
No
day.
way. Was he
I'd
any
say
good? I've never heard him sing.
his guitar playing okay. His singing.
You don't want to trash him. It's okay, Rick.
And
I
then
don't
The
think he's
Rock,
gonna see this episode.
you Dwayne Johnson too. Like he's
Yeah.
larger than life. That
Oh
that
yeah.
guy. Well, I used to watch him. I was probably in the tail end of my pro wrestling watching when The Rock was coming in, but I still remember The Rock. And can you smell what The Rock is cooking? He'd get up there,
Yeah,
but
yeah. That's
to him all
great.
those years later for his movies, it was a pretty big deal.
Now I know you've been touring around and telling people about 299 Queen Street
Yeah.
West. when I've heard that it'll be like December on Crave for people that haven't gotten a chance to see it live.
Yeah, it was supposed to be December 8th was the original date. I'm not
Okay.
sure if that's still the date where it's going to be available for streaming on Crave, but if it's not the 8th, it'll be soon after, hopefully in time for Christmas or the holidays, because I know a lot of people gather in front of their TVs
Yeah,
on
yeah.
couches in front of their fireplaces. But yeah, the tour was amazing, and it was amazing to see the documentary on a big screen with big sound. Like,
Yeah.
I prefer seeing it that way. I prefer seeing movies that way. But watching it, in your living room or on your device, wherever you are streaming it, it's still going to be an amazing trip down memory lane. But I just hope people get to catch it, and I hope people love it.
Yeah. What can people expect from it?
Well, definitely, like I said, it's the ultimate trip down memory lane. If you were a Much Music viewer like I was as a teenager, it's just going to bring all those warm, fuzzy feelings back out again. Seeing Steve, Anthony, and Erica M, and Michael Williams and Christopher Ward. Now, these are the VJs I grew up with, but every generation has their go-to VJs. Sean goes right up until the end where it started to take that downward spiral. Now, I don't know what generation you belong to or when you started and when you ended watching Much Music, but there was a time where it all came to an end because it just wasn't the same Much Music anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
It was less about the music and more about these other things that were going on that kids and young Canadians seemed to be into at the time. But yeah, they can expect to see a lot of footage that they probably have never seen before,
Oh,
and
that's
they'll
great.
the origin story of why Much Music came to be in the first place.
I love that, man. Well,
Yeah.
if people want to follow you, it's at Rick_Campanelli on Instagram,
Oh
at
yeah,
Rick
you got
A.
it.
Campanelli on Twitter, and you're
Yeah,
also on Facebook. So you can go like
I
that
know.
page.
I gotta engage more on those other ones. But I do love doing the Instagram. I love posting the videos of the pictures and writing the captions. I just love creating content, and that's something that we did back in the day at Much Music because we were given so much freedom. So to be able to do it all these years later, I'm in a blessed spot right now.
I love that, man. I love that you also like appreciate the experience as well. Like
I do.
it's weird.
I'm,
You're in it, you're the one conducting it, but you're also like from the outside with us, like appreciating what it is.
oh
Like
man,
it's magical.
those
We come
words,
full circle.
Johnny, mean a lot to me, man, because I am, like I said earlier, I'm a fan, just like anybody,
Yeah.
of the music, of the film, of the TV. Like I'm a fan, and I'll get excited each and every time. I think when you start losing that excitement, it's time for you to move on and try something new. But I'll get excited each and every time. That's why I love doing it so much these days. Still,
Amazing, man.
because I'm
Well,
still excited, so
yeah,
passionate about it. Yeah,
of course. Well, it was amazing talking to you. I
yeah,
appreciate
man.
you making the
You do
time
a
that you
great
could.
job, John. You do a
Thanks, man.
wonderful job over there, man. Keep up the good work and continued success for your podcast.
You hear that, everybody? Rick Campanelli says the podcast is great. Hit that subscribe button, everyone.
Because you're doing it, man. You're a great personality. I appreciate your
Oh,
time.
thank you, man. That means a lot. Well, I hope your kids get well soon and your family recovers. It's just
I'm gonna go see if they need their dose of Dayquil right now. So
yeah.
and
Oh,
chicken.
there's a thing that I always get when I feel sick. It's like electrolytes. You can get it at like
Oh
Shoppers.
yeah. My wife took
Pedialyte. You can
Pedialyte.
get it in like
Pedialyte's great.
freezies too. Get them a couple of those. They'll be good as
We got
new.
that. Oh yeah,
Amazing.
that we got a whole pharmacy upstairs.
Okay, great. Perfect.
We've been down that road a few times. Okay.
Nice. All right, man. We'll have a good rest of your
Johnny,
day.
great stuff, my man. Thanks for getting in touch. Hopefully we get to do this again at
Yeah,
a later
definitely.
for a
Let
catch
me know
up.
when you're free, or you need to
Yeah, man.
promote the reunion tour of
Yeah,
299
man.
Queen Street West.
Something else that I can promote in the near future. So maybe I'll call you back up and we'll do part 2.
Would love to, man. Would love to.
Johnny,
All right.
thanks so much for having me.
Of course, man. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Johnny.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.